Hello students, we are going to look at college board practices number 5, module number 1. So let's start with the first question. It says that a rabbit should consume 25 calories per pound of the rabbit's weight and plus an additional 11 calories. And at the end, the question gives you that C represents the total number of calories. We have to create an equation for C. And the most important part is the weight of the rabbit is X pounds. So the question says that the rabbit is going to consume 25 calories per pound. So obviously, if the weight of the rabbit is, let's say, 3 pounds, then the rabbit is going to consume 25 times 3 number of calories. And for example, the weight of the rabbit is 7 pounds. The rabbit is going to consume 25 times 7 calories, right? But in this question, the examiner tells you that the weight of the rabbit is X pounds. So obviously, rabbit is going to consume 25 times X number of calories plus additional 11 calories. That's a fixed number of calories. And this tells you the value of C. So this would be the equation that we would be creating for C number of calories, or for total number of calories. And that's mentioned in the answer option B at the bottom. So this question says that a spatial camera is used for underwater ocean research, and the camera is at a depth of 39 fathoms. And the question also tells you that what is the value of 1 fathom. So that's an easy question. 1 fathom is given to you as 6 feet. So you just have to convert 39 fathoms into feet, right? So I'm going to do 39 multiplied by 6, since one of these fathoms is actually equal to 6 feet. So obviously 39 fathoms would be 39 times 6 feet altogether. That would come out as 234. And that's mentioned in answer option A. So the question tells us that in the figure, line M is actually parallel to line N. So we have got two parallel lines. Now, which of the following statements is true? Now, we know that this angle is 145 degrees. So obviously X, which is actually a vertically opposite angle of 145 degrees, and they are always created because of the intersection of two lines. Now, X would exactly be equal to 145 degrees. So whenever two lines gets intersected, for example, like this angle over here would always be equal to this particular angle. An angle at the top, for example, this one would be equal to angle at the bottom. So the vertical angles would be equal and the horizontal ones would be equal as well. We call it vertically opposite angles. If this is 145, the angle X, which is unknown to us, that should also be equal to 145. The question says the value of X is either less than or greater than or equal to 45, or it cannot be determined. It can be determined, but it is actually exactly equal to 145, not less than or more than, but exactly equal to 145. We're going to go with answer option C in this question. The function f represents the total cost in dollars of attending an arcade when X games are played. So X represents the number of games that you're playing, and f of X represents the total cost. And the question tells you the total cost, which is $58, right? So you don't know the value of number of games. Instead, you have to figure out the value of X, or the number of games you would be playing once the expenditure is altogether $58. Now, you have to be very careful, since $58 represents the value of F, not the value of X. You just have to be careful. You're not going to put $58 right for X, but instead you're going to equate this entire equation, or you're going to substitute this $58 for f of X. So I'm going to write $58 for f of X is equals to then 14 plus 4x, and if I subtract 14 on both sides, I'll be left with 44 is equals to 4x. And then I'm going to divide both of the sides by 4, and then X would come out as 11, right? So that should be the right answer for this one, number of games played. Or you can just type this entire equation on decimals, just write it down, f of X, and then is equals to, what's the equation with us? 14 plus 4x. And then since the value of X is not given to you as 58, instead it's basically the value of f of X. So I'm going to write f of X is equal to $58. And Desmos is going to create these graphs for me, and I can easily figure out the intersection point of these graphs. And I'm actually looking at the value of X, right? So that's your intersection point right over here. It tells you that once the cost is $58, the value of X has to be 11. So that's the Desmos method of doing this question. So we have a linear equation right with us for x minus 28 is equals to minus 24. I'm looking to find out the value of x minus 7. Now, if you look very carefully, if this gets divided by 4, this becomes x. 28 divided by 4 is actually 7. So I'm supposed to divide by 4 this entire equation. If I divide this entire equation by 4, I will get the value of x minus 7. So let's say I'm putting a 4 right at the bottom. So 4x divided by 4 would come out as x, and 28 divided by 4 would be 7, and minus 24 divided by 4 would be minus 6. So that's your value of x right over here. So comes out as x minus 7 comes out as minus 6. You can do this on decimals as well, but obviously you're going to figure out the value of x first. So if we have the equation as 4x minus 28, and that is actually equal to minus 24. So let's just figure out what is the value of x that I'm getting. It's right over here. I'm getting x as 1, but I don't have to calculate the value of x. I don't have to code the value of x. I actually have to code the value of x minus 7. So I'm doing 1 minus 7, 1 minus 7, and that would come out as minus 6 since I know that the value of x is 1. So 1 minus 7, that's the right answer through the decimals method. The amount of Hannah's bill for a food order was $50. Now, she offered a tip of 20% of the amount of bill, and we're just looking to find out the tip amount, not the entire cost, right? What is the amount in dollars of the tip Hannah gave? So we just have to figure out 20% of the number $50. So I can just type this entirely in my decimals, 20%, or you can just do it manually as well. If you want 20% of 50, that should be your answer, 20%. Just removing this off. Okay, let's just do it again. 20%. 20%. Okay, 20% of 50 comes out as 10. You can do it manually as well. So what's actually 20? Well, 10% of the number $50. It will always be 5, right? Double that number, you will get that as equal to 10. In this question, the examiner provides us a table A, B, C, D, E, 5 different nests, and number of eggs are also provided. The question tells you a sixth nest with 121 eggs is added to create a new data. Which of the following correctly compares the mean of the two data set? Now, if you look very carefully, these are the 5 nests that I have, and all of these values are somewhere around 130s and 140s. Then the new value comes up 121, right? If you see that this new value is actually an outlier of this set, right? The lower outlier. So obviously, it would try to deteriorate your mean, your original mean for the initial set, right? Because 121 is actually smaller than all the values that you have in this data. 121 is actually smaller than every single value that you originally have in this data. So obviously, your new mean would actually decrease itself from the previous mean. So I'm going to go with the mean of the new data. The mean of the original data has to be more than the mean of the new data set. The new data set is a set which was created after adding the number 121. So I'm going to go with answer option A because this new number 121 is actually lesser than all of the previous values in the set. So obviously mean would go on the lower side once 121 gets itself added into the data. Or if you just want to confirm your answer, you can just calculate the mean value using your decimals. So mean of what are the numbers that we have in the original data 149, and then that was 144, and then 148, and then the next one was 136, and then 139. So I have the mean value right at the bottom. It's actually 143.2 for the old data, right? Now, once I add 121 as my sixth value, right? Let's see what happens with my mean. Let's have a look at this value. It is currently 143.2. It should decrease, right? Once I add the sixth value, 121, it's now 139.5. So it's decreasing. So I can say that the mean of the old data is actually bigger than the mean of the new data. That's mentioned in answer option A by representing the original data and the new one as the new data set. So we have a linear inequality in this question. One thing is pretty clear that this y-intercept right over here is minus 1. So you can see this y-intercept right over here as minus 1. And I can also see that since this line is coming downwards, the gradient should be a negative number, right? So we know that the standard equation of the line forms are always y is equals to mx plus c. But I have not calculated my gradient, but I know that the y-intercept has to be minus 1. And gradient has to be a negative number because the line is coming downwards while you're moving from left to right. So the only coefficient of x that I see in all of these answer options are either 3 or minus 3. But considering I'm not really looking to calculate my gradient, but looking at my answer options, I can say that since gradient has to be a negative number, it should be minus 3, right? So my equation would be y is equals to minus 3x plus 1, or you can say minus 1, that's the y-intercept, or minus 3x, that's the gradient. Gradient should be either 3 or minus 3, because these are the only numerical values that I have in my answer options. But considering this line is coming downwards, I've just taken gradient as negative 3. Now, since the region, this is actually the equation of this dotted line. And since if you see that this region is above this line, this entire shaded region is actually above the line. So from the point of view of variable y, I'm going to say y is greater than minus 1 minus 3x. And if you just want to cross-check your answer, you can just type this on Desmos and see what graph, what shaded region this Desmos produces. Now, for example, if I test answer option A, I'm going to type y is, you can test every single answer option if you don't know the logic of doing these questions. Now, minus 1, so I'm going to start with y is less than, and then minus 1 plus 3x plus 3x. That's the graph that I'm getting right over here. So it's not actually exactly similar to what I have in the question, right? And the line is also going upwards. I had a line which was coming downwards, so this has to be incorrect. But if you see answer option D, which was the inequality that I created earlier, y is greater than minus 1 minus 3x. If you just type y is greater than minus 1 minus 3x, let's see what happens. Y is greater than minus 1 minus 3x, right? Minus 1 minus 3x. You can see this graph. Just to confirm, is your y-intercept coming out as negative number? You can just click this part and you can see that the 0 comma minus 1 represents a y-intercept perfectly. So I think answer option D should be the right choice. Through both of the approaches, you can use either of the approach. The manual one, if you're good enough, if you know the concept of shading inequalities, of shading graphs using inequalities, or if you do not know the concept, you can just simply type every single answer option in Desmos, and Desmos will figure it out for you. So we have a cubical expression in this question, and I just have to simplify this one. So 8x cubed plus 8, and you have to be extra careful that this minus is actually going to multiply with all the terms inside your parenthesis. So minus times 1x cubed, that would come out as minus x cubed, and minus times minus 2, that would be plus 2. So we have 8x cubed minus 1x cubed, that would be 7x cubed. And then 8 plus 2 is just 10. And that's mentioned in answer option B. But if we just want to do this on Desmos, but it's not really recommended to do this question on Desmos, but still if you want to check your answer, or let's say if a difficult expression comes up and you're not able to simplify that one, you can just type this on Desmos. Like for example, I'm going to start with 8x cubed, which is my original question. So 8x cubed, and then plus 8, close, and then minus, and then x cubed. Let's see, let's say you don't know anything about simplification or algebraic simplification, just type everything on Desmos. And since every single answer option is in the form of ax cubed plus b, right? Ax cubed plus b. So I'm going to equate it with ax cubed, and then plus b at the end. And since I'm trying to regress this for a and b, I'm going to put x as x1. Every time when you have just substituted variable x, you're going to put that as x1. So Desmos can find out the values of a and b. The problem with Desmos is Desmos had just tested the left hand side and right hand side with only one value of x. But this entire equation is true for all the values of x in the world. So I can communicate my Desmos to test this entire system for a lot of values of x. I can just write random. I can also use the bracket regression method, random, and let's just test this entire system for 15 random values of x. And Desmos gives you the right values of a and b right at the top. A comes out as 7 and b comes out as 10. So ax cubed plus b is actually equal to 7x cubed plus 10. That should be the right answer as answer option B. So if the xy plane line t passes through these points 0, 9 and 1, 17. Now, this is not just a random point. This is actually a y-intercept. What are y-intercepts? Y-intercepts are all those values of y where the x value is always 0, right? You can see that your x is 0. So obviously your y-intercept should be 9, right? I can say that either answer option A or answer option D should be the right one. Answer option B and C cannot be my right choices because I see my y-intercept with the constant term, right? At the end is 8. I can see my y-intercept is 1 over 8. By the way, the standard equation of the lines form is always y is equals to mx plus c, where c represents your y-intercept, right? I can also calculate my gradient using the formula change in y divided by change in x, so y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So I can say that 17 and then minus 9 and divided by 1 minus 0, that comes out as 17 minus 9 is 8, and 8 divided by 1 is just 8. So my equation would be y is equals to slope times x, that should be 8x plus the y-intercept. And that's something that's given to me as 9. So that's my equation, y is equals to 8x plus 9 as answer option D. But if you want to do this in Desmos, I can just provide Desmos the entire coordinate system. The first one is 0 and the next one is 9. Let's see if you're checking your answer. You have enough time left in your module number 1. You just want to check your answers. You can just go at the automatic regression, and Desmos is going to regress this entire linear equation for you. It comes out as y is equals to 8x plus 9. That's answer option B. What is a solution to the given equation? Now, if you add 7 on both sides, this minus 7 and minus 7 are going to cancel each other. So left with a factorize one, d minus 30 with a 0 on the other side, right? d minus 30 times d plus 30 equals to 0, right? So both of these individual factors are going to equate themselves with 0. For example, the first one, which is d minus 30, is going to equate itself with 0. That gives you the value of d as 30. And the next one, which is d plus 30. Since you're looking to just find out any one particular value of d, you can go with this one as a right answer as well. But still, you can also go d as actually equal to minus 30 as well, right? So you can type any one of these two answer options over here. Let's just take this d as 30. Or you can type this on Desmos as well. I would like to replace variable d with variable x, right? So Desmos could plot vertical lines for me. Because if I type d, Desmos would ask me to provide him the value of d, which I won't be able to do that because I'm looking to find out the value of d, right? I just don't want my Desmos to open sliders for the unknown constant d. So I'm just replace d with x, so x minus 30, and then times x plus 30, and then at the end you have a minus 7 equals to minus 7, right? So Desmos is going to create two vertical lines. I can have a look at those two vertical lines, and one of them is giving me the value of x as 30, and the other one of them is giving me the value of x as minus 30. So I can quote any one of the two solutions, 30 or minus 30, both of them are absolutely correct for this question. Store sells two different sized container of blueberries, and the total sales, something in dollars, that's given to you as 896.86. You just have to understand this entire constant on the right hand side of the equation. This is something that is represented in dollars. It actually tells you the total sales in dollars. So obviously every individual term would obviously represent something in dollars, right? Because dollars once gets added into dollars, only then you're going to get your answer in the form of dollars. And 896.86 is something in the form of dollars. So I can say that 4.51x, which is my first term, and 6.07y, which is my second term, both of them are actually in the form of dollars. Now, what are variable x and y representing in this question? The question tells you, here comes the most important part. X is the number of smaller containers. So now x is the quantity of containers. And if someone is actually multiplying x by 4.51 to get the entire answer in the form of dollars, it means that the value of one single container would be $4.51. One single container would be costing you $4.51. That's the cost of one single container, $4.51. You can say that the cost of one small container is actually $4.51. And through the same logic, one large container would be costing you $6.07. And you have to find out the difference of these two prices. What is the price in dollars of each smaller container? No, you don't have to find out the difference. You just have to find out the price in dollars of each smaller container. And we did interpret that number as $4.51. I'm going to type 4.51 over here. So this is my answer for this question, which is $4.51. So we have got a function in this question models the intensity of an X-ray beam in number of particles, and T represents something in millimeters below the surface of a sample of iron, right? Now this is an exponential function, and you must know that this number right in the beginning, that always represents your principal value. So the principal value or the initial value of the number of ray beams, or the initial intensity of this ray beam would be $500, and this intensity is actually decreasing by a rate of half, or actually decreasing by 50% once T changes by 12 units, right? T is something in millimeters, so I can say that started with an initial intensity of 500, and that intensity is actually decreasing by 50% once millimeters changes by 12 units. So when there is a change of 12 units in your millimeters, the value of y, or the intensity of this X-ray beam actually decreases by 50%, right? Now, what is something that we're looking to figure out in this question? According to the model, what is the estimated number of particles in an X-ray beam when it is at the surface of the sample of iron? So when you're actually operating right on the surface, you're actually operating 0 millimeters below the surface, right? Because T represents how many millimeters you are below the surface. If you're operating right on the surface, it actually means that you're operating 0 millimeters below the surface, right? So which means that I'm going to put 0 over here, and 0 divided by 12 would be 0. And any number raised to power 0, that's always 1. And then that 1 is going to multiply itself by the number 500, right? And that should come out as 500. You can just interpret this question as P represents something in millimeters that are below the surface of the sample of iron. So if I'm actually at the surface, it actually means that the examiner wants me to figure out the initial intensity of this X-ray beam. And we already concluded initially, every time when you see this exponential form in its parent form, every time when you see exponential function in its parent form, this number, this coefficient always represents an initial value. So 500 is basically my initial value, or the value when time is 0, because anytime when you use the word initial, the time is always 0. Examiner, or you can say the millimeters in this question, because T represents something in millimeters. Since you are operating right on the surface, this means T's value would be 0. And at T0, the intensity was 500 because that was my principal value. You just figure out after substituting T as 0 as well. You'll still get the same answer. If you would like to just see it on Desmos is going to provide you that value 500. And since, let's say, you don't know anything about indices, how the indices operate, so you're going to put 0 divided by 12, right? At the top, I'm going to put 0 because I'm just putting T as 0. 0 divided by 12. And let's see what's the answer I'm getting. I'm getting my value of the intensity of the X-ray beam as 500. So in this question, the graph of the rational function f is shown. So this is the graph of the function f of x, right? You can say that this is my f of x. And you have to figure out which of the following is the graph of y is equals to f of x plus 5. And since 5 is added on the outside of variable x, this means a translation, vertical translation. And since this is a plus 5, everything would go 5 unit upwards. So this entire graph would actually go 5 unit upwards. And if you look carefully, this entire graph is getting very close to the y value of 1, or y value of 1. You can just interpret it in this way. It's very close to the y value of 1 once x increases. So if you just raise this entire graph 5 units upwards, it would get very close to this 1. What is 1 plus 5? It's actually 6. It would get very close. If you try to create an asymptote, an approximate asymptote at y is equals to 6. I just have to look at this number. Or you can just figure out any random point on this graph. For example, I can see that this is 3, 3, right? But this coordinate shouldn't be 3, 3 in my final answer. Since I'm increasing everything by 5 units, and since I'm actually moving vertically, the value of y would actually increase itself by 5. So this would be 3, 8, right? So you just have to figure out, this graph is coming downwards, right? Not going upwards. I'm just looking to figure out if this graph is again coming downwards. Initially, it was trying to be very close to the value of y as 1, but now it's even lower than y value of 1. So I think this should not be the right answer. I think this should also not be the right choice. It has just moved slightly upwards. This was y1. But I was looking for this value to come out as y is equals to 6, not y is equals to 1. And if you look, for example, this particular coordinate, this is basically 3, 4 point something. I was actually searching for 3, 3 plus 5. That should be 3, 8, not 3, 4 point something. So obviously answer option C should also be incorrect. And if you see this coordinate, this is 3, 8 right over here, 3, 8. And you can actually notice that this graph has translated entirely upwards by 5 units. For example, this is your line y is equals to 6. It's getting very close to the number y is equals to 6. Similarly, when it was getting very close to the number y is equals to 1, 1 plus 5 gives you 6, and which is why this has to be the right choice for this question. The given equation relates to positive numbers, and I think we have to make C the subject of the formula because every single answer option has C isolated. So I will try to isolate the variable C or the constant C in this question. So for example, if I divide both of my sides by the constant n, so I will be having P divided by n, and if I divide by n on my right hand side, n and n are going to cancel each other, so we'll be left with 19 minus C, right? Now, if you subtract 19 on both sides, you will be having P over n minus 19 is equals to minus C. Now, that's not C, that's basically minus C. So I'm going to multiply both of my sides by minus 1. I'm going to multiply minus 1 on the left hand side and on the right hand side as well. So once you multiply every single term by minus 1, this would become minus P over n, and this would be minus 19 times minus 1. That would be positive. positive 19. And minus c times minus 1, that would be positive c. So c comes out as 19 minus b, and that's mentioned in the answer option B. But if, let's say, if you want to do this question in Desmos, for example, in the original equation, I have p as a subject of the formula. So I would have to define my Desmos, the values of n and c. So let's take n and c, it's just random numbers. So for example, n is 2, and let's say c is actually 3, right? Since I'm looking to find out the value of c, I need to get my answer equivalent to 3, right? So I've just assumed c as 3 in this case. Now let's provide the Desmos. What is the equation that we're dealing in? We're dealing with the equation that starts with p is equals to n times, and then we have 19 minus c, right? 19 minus c. That's my equation. Desmos tells me that once n is 2 and c is 3, you will get your value of p as 32, right? Now, since I'm looking to find out the value of c, I know the value of c, and I'm just looking to explore which one of these 4 answer options gives me the right value of c, which is actually 3. So once I start typing the value of c mentioned in answer option A, that's 19 plus p divided by n. So I'm going to start with 19, and then plus p, and then plus p divided by n. Okay, so divided by n. So I'm getting this as 25.5, not actually equal to 3, right? Since this answer option A was claiming that this is actually equal to C. If it is actually equal to 3, then this should have come out as equal to 3, right? And it's coming out as 25.5, so this should be incorrect, right? Moving on to the next one, 19 minus P divided by N. So I've got 19 minus P, and at the bottom I've got an N, right? This is minus 6.5. Next one, 19 plus P divided by N. So I've got a 19, and then I've got a plus P divided by N. Okay, so this is coming out as 35. Let's have a look at the last answer option. That's 19 minus P over N. So let's just remove this plus and add a minus. 19 minus P over N is coming out as exactly equal to 3, or the value of C, which you initially assumed. So through both the methods, we can say that the right answer option should be answer option D for this one. Length of each edge of a box is 29 inches. Now each side of the box is in the shape of a square, right? The box does not have a lid, so we have a cube over here, but the cube is actually open from the top, right? Cube is a shape which has got 6 square faces, and since every single one of these faces is a square, so I've got this length 29, so obviously this should be 29 as well. So now in this case, I'm not going to find out the surface area of all 6 faces, but instead I'm going to find out the surface area of all these 5 faces, because it's actually open from the top, right? You're going to take the bottom face, but you're not going to count your top face, right? So the bottom face is your first face, the right and left faces are 2 more faces altogether. Hits 3, and the front, and then there's a back face as well. So 3 plus 1 plus 1, that comes out as 5. So I'm dealing with 5 cases in this cube, right? And if you see that this particular face has an area, should have an area of 29 times 29, or 29 square. So I'm going to multiply 29 square, which is the area of one of these faces, by 5, since every single of these faces are actually equal to this particular face at the bottom, since it's a cube. So I'm going to do 29 square times 5. So that will be 29 times 29 times 5, or you can put a square at the top as well if you want to. Okay, this should be 5 as well. 29 times 29 times 5, that comes out as 4205. That should be the right answer. This one, you can just type this on your scientific calculator as well, instead of typing this entirely on the Desmos. What is the sum of the solutions to the given equation? So I've got a modulus function over here. It's pretty easy to simplify this one. We can use both the methods, the Desmos one and the manual one. For example, if I subtract 45 on both sides, this would be mod of x minus 9. Mod of x minus 9 is equals to 63 minus 45. That would be 18, right? And since I'm going to open this modulus function, I'm going to start with creating 2 equations. So x minus 9 could either be 18, but at the same time, x minus 9 could either be minus 18 as well, because modulus does not allow this minus 18 to be quoted on the outside. Modulus converts every single negative value into a positive 1. So it will reflect, even if the answer to x minus 9 is minus 18, it will reflect this as a positive number. So x minus 9 could be minus 18. And x minus 9 could be 18, right? So x comes out as 27, x comes out as 27 from here. And if you solve this one would be x minus 9 equals to minus 18. If I add 9 on both sides, I think this would come out as minus 9, minus 18 plus 9. So I have both the values, both the possible values of x. And since I'm looking to find out the sum of these 2 values, I'm going to add the number 27 into the number minus 9, and that should come out as 18, right? That should be the right answer. Now, if you want to do this question, you can just literally type entire equation in Desmos, and since I'm looking to figure out the values of x, let's just type this into a different equation. I'm going to start with the mod function. So I'm going to start with mod of x minus 9. So x minus 9 and then mod close and then plus 45. Instead of writing this as 63, I'm just writing this as y because I really want to look at my intersection points clearly, right? Y is equals to 63. Y is equals to 63 because y is actually equal to 63. So I can, since the original equation was in the form of variable x, we're actually looking to find out the value of variable x. You can see these intersection points right over here. And one of these intersection points, the x value is actually minus 9. And the other intersection point, the x value is basically 27. You just have to add these two numbers. Minus 9 plus 27, that's your answer. Or the answer to the sum of the solutions of this absolute equation, that's 18. What is the value of tangent 92 pi over 3? So I can just move on to the function component and then I can just type tangent 92 pi over 3, right? In the next line. Okay, so tangent 92 pi over 3. So I'm going to type 92 pi and then dividing everything by 3, right? So 92 pi over 3 comes out as minus 1.732, right? Now, since this first answer option is written as minus under root 3, let's explore what is this minus under root 3 equals to, right? So if I type minus under root 3, minus root 3, let's see what do I get? Minus the square root of 3. I'm getting this as minus 1.73205080757, exactly equivalent to 1092 pi over 3's answer, which means the right answer to this question should be answer option A. Pretty simple question that you can do using Desmos, even if you do not know the exact values of radians and degrees for tangent function. Which expression is equivalent to 42a divided by k plus 42? Since we have a 1 at the bottom, so I'm going to multiply my denominator by k, which means I would have to multiply my numerator by k as well. So I've got a common denominator as k, and in my numerators, what do I have? I have 42a, that stays as it is, and the next term is 42ak squared, 42ak squared. Now, if you try to factorize your numerator, you can simply see that 42a is the common factor in your numerator. So you can just factor this out, 42a. Taken as the common factor, you will be left with just a 1 in your first term. And since this is your second term, you have already taken 42a on the outside, you'll be just left with k squared as your second term divided by k. So you can just factorize this to confirm that this should be the right answer. That's option B. But if you want to do this question manually, or you can use this approach. If you want to do this question in Desmos, you can just define these constants a and k and see what. Since the question says that k is a number actually greater than 0, so I can just type a as any number. Let's say a is 5. I can take a as any number, but k has to be more than 0. So let's take k as something more than 0. Let's take k as 3. So I've just defined this entire. I've just defined all the constants involved in the question. Now let's put our expression. So 42a divided by k. So that was your expression. So 42a at the top. So I'm going to type 42a at the top divided by k and then plus 42ak, 42ak. Now this gives me that once a is 5 and k is 3, you will get your answer equal to 700, right? So if any one of these answer options is basically an equivalent form of this entire expression, this answer should also come out as 700, right? For these assumed values of a and k. Let's just explore answer option A. So 84a divided by k. So you've got 84a divided by k. This is not coming out as 700, it's actually coming out as 140. So I can say that this is not an equivalent expression to 42a divided by k plus 42ak. So let's move on to the next one. You can just edit this one, 42ak squared. Just put k squared at the top. ak squared. So I'm just going to put k squared. 42ak squared divided by k. This comes out as 1260, not 700. The next one is 42a times k plus 1. Let's put that one as well. So k and then plus 1. So I'm just putting k plus 1 inside parenthesis divided by k. That's coming out as 560. I need this to come out as 700, which means I'm going to go with answer option B. That's basically, okay, so this was 42. Okay, 42. I wrote this as 84. So 42, a times k plus 1 divided by k. That's not coming out as 700. That's coming out as 280. Let's move on to the next one. 42a k squared plus 1. Just to put a square at the top of k. So k squared. That comes out as exactly equal to 700. That should be my right answer as answer option B. That's one effective method of using Desmos to just cross-check your answers, and still you can just use this entirely to get to your right answer in case you're not good in simplifying expressions. The graph of the given equation is circled in the xy plane. So we all know that you just change the sign of these numbers, you will get to know the center coordinate of a circle. So my center coordinate of the circle, let's say I've got a circle right over here. the center coordinate of that circle would be minus 4, 19, right? And I know that this is basically the value of r squared. So you can say that r squared is actually equal to 121. If you take square root on both sides, you will get the value of your radius as 11. So I know that my radius is actually 11. Now, since the question says that point A, comma B, where A represents the value of x and B obviously represents the value of y, lies somewhere on the circle. Now, which of the following is a possible value for A? So we're just looking at A, right? Which is basically the value of x. Now, if you try to move, for example, this is your center. If you try to move rightwards from your center, then what is the extreme value of x that could actually lie on this circle? I'm looking to calculate that number. So if you add minus 4, this is your minus 4 right at the center, the value of x. If you add 11 into it, since your radius is 11, so what is minus 4 plus 11? So minus 4 plus 11 gives you a 7, right? So the extreme value of x is basically 7. Now if you go 11 units behind minus 4, so what is minus 4 minus 11? That's minus 15, right? So I can say that minus 15 is the lowest value of x that you can actually get on this circle. So I can say that the value of x, which is labeled as a in this question, I can say that a is actually somewhere between minus 15 to 7 inclusive. And the only answer option that actually lies in this range is actually minus 14. So I'm going to go with answer option B as my right choice. Now, another method of doing this question manually would be if you just try to check your answers to trial and error approach. For example, if you put minus 16 for x over there, you will get this as minus 16 plus 4 as minus 12. And minus 12 squared would be 144. The next step, you would be subtracting 144 on both sides. But once you subtract 121 from 144, you will get this as a negative number. So you won't be able to find out the square root of that negative number, which is why minus 16 cannot be the right choice. And same is the situation over here. If you put 11 for x, 11 plus 4 would be 15 squared. That comes out as 225. The next step would be subtracting 225 from both sides. You will be left with y minus 19 whole squared would be equal to 125 minus 225, and that will come out as minus 104. You won't be able to find out the square root of the number negative 104 since you have to solve it for y. The next step would be taking square root on both sides. Negative 104 square root is not possible, at least in the SOD course, right? So which is why answer option C cannot be the right choice, and you can use the same reasoning for answer option B as well. That's why that has to be incorrect. But let's say if you do not know anything about circles and you want to understand what is actually happening in this question, you can just type this entire question and decimals and let's see what type of graph do you get. X plus 4 whole square. So x plus 4 whole square, that's my first term. And then I have plus y minus 19 whole square, y minus 19, and then whole square at the top. Whole square at the top. And then, okay, just have to remove this 9 and put a bracket. And then your r square's value is basically 121. Now, since my A represents value of x, the question says which of the following is a possible value for A set. This is my circle right over here. Let's just have a look at this circle. The first answer option answer option A says that A can be equal to minus 16. It actually means that x can be equal to minus 16. So for example, if I plot x is equals to minus 16's line, let's see what type of line do I get. I get this purple line. And if you see that all the values of y on this purple line are outside this circle, they do not lie on the circle, right? All the values of y, once x is minus 16, since this is a vertical line, all the values of y, once x is minus 16, will be outside this circle, right? Let's have a look at x is equals to 14 and x equals to 11 as well. X equals to 14, the next one is x equals to 11, and the final one is x equals to 19. Now let's have a look at 19 and 11. The blue and the red line. Can you see this blue line right over here? Blue line, that's way outside the circle, right? And for example, if you try to have a look at x equals to 11, that's also very much outside the circle. Red line, sorry, this was minus 14, not 14. So when I just type x equals to minus 14, I will be having a black line. Let's see, where does this black line lies? It passes through the circle, right? So I can say, for example, x can be actually equal to minus 14. And the value of b in that case would be 14 point something. X can be actually equal to minus 14 and the value of b at that point would be 23.58 something, right? So I can expect at least two values once x is actually equal to minus 14. Both of them would actually lie on the circle. It would become a random point that lies in the circle as a comma b. That's why answer option B should be the right choice. We have a right rectangular prism that has a height of 9 inches. So let's try to create a cuboid here. So I've got a cuboid in this question, like this. And the question says that this particular cuboid, the length of the prism base is x inches. So let's say this is x. And the question at the same time, which is 7 inches more than the width of the prism space, right? Now this x is actually 7 inches more than the width. Now what does the question say? Let's say I've got an unknown width. If you add 7 into it, you will get your value of x, right? So obviously my width would be x minus 7, right? It wouldn't be x plus 7. So I can say that width would be x minus 7. I already know the height. I already know the height of this prism that's provided to me at the top as 9 inches. So how do we find out the volume of prism, or at least volume of cuboid, length into width into height? Or if you're considering this is a prism, it's always base area times 3D height, right? So my base area would be multiplying this x by x minus 7, the 2 inches inside. That should be my base area. And the 3D height is provided to me as 9, so I'm going to put a 9 on the outside. That's my answer, x times x minus 7, that's times 9. And that's mentioned in answer option B. So we've got a function in this question a under root x plus b. A and b are two random constants. Now the question says that a and b x y plane, the graph of y is equals to f of x passes through the point minus 24, 0. Let's try to do this question manually first. So if I put y as 0, I'm going to put x as minus 24, right? So 0 for y is equals to, a is an unknown constant, right? It's not a variable in this question, right? So I'm going to put x as minus 24 plus b, right? Now if you divide both of the sides by a would actually eliminate. 0 divided by a would be 0, and this entire right hand side would also get divided by a, and they are going to cancel each of those. So you'll be left with 0 is equals to under root minus 24 plus b. Now the next step would be taking square on both sides, but the square of the number 0 is just 0, right? And if you take square on your right hand side, the square root would cancel with that square at the top. So you'll be left with 0 is equals to minus 24 plus b. Now at least I know the value of the constant b. I'm getting a fixed value of the constant b. That's coming out as number 24. Now the question also says that f of 24, once you put x as 24 in this function, you will get the value of y as something less than 0. So let's see what is my function. And I'm going to try to put x as 24. So my function starts with an unknown value of constant a, and then inside the square root, I'm going to put x as 24, but coincidentally, my value of b, which is the next term, that's also 24, right? 24 plus 24. And the question says that this entire answer should come out as a negative number less than 0. The next step is a under root 48. So this is under root 48 less than 0, right? Now, I need this entire left-hand side to come out as a negative number. I know under root 48. What is under root 48? You can just type this on decimal and see what is the exact value of under root 48 to make sense out of the question. This is 6.928. So 6.928 is actually multiplying itself by an unknown constant, and the answer to the product comes out as a negative number, right? Which actually means what? This is a positive number. Under root 48 is a negative number. And positive times negative will be the only possible scenario when you can actually get a negative answer for two possible products, for the product of two possible numbers. This is a positive value, so obviously a has to be strictly a negative number, right? To get your answer, to make sure that you're getting your answer as a negative number or less than 0. So the next thing that I can say is a has to be negative. A is less than 0, right? And all the numbers which are actually less than 0 in the world are actually lesser than this b's value of 24. So I can clearly say that a has to be a number. Since a is a negative number, all negative numbers are actually less than 24. So I can say a has to be less than b. I'm going to go answer option B as my right choice. But how can we do this question in decimal? Since we know one of the coordinates that lies on the curve, so I'm going to get that coordinate into my table, so that coordinate becomes the static point. And that static point would be minus 24, 0. Minus 24, 0. Now I will try to regress this for the unknown values of a and b. So I'm going to put y1 is actually equal to a inside a square root. So you're going to put a square root and x1 and plus b. Let's say I don't know the value of b, right? Desmos tells me that a is actually 0 and b is actually 120, right? But I'm not really sure about this one. What else do I have? The question also tells you that once the value of x is 24, right? The value of y is actually less than 0. So what can I do more in this question? I'm getting this type of line right over here. You can see this graph right over here. Right over here, I can see that this is a permanent point. So I would have to change my value of a or the y value of b in such a way that this graph is not a horizontal line, let's say I don't have any information about this line. For example, if I put A as 5, the value of B comes out as 24. So I've changed A and B comes out as a constant number, right? Which is coming out as 24. Now, the important part is at x equals to 24, your value of the entire function should have come out as a number less than 0. So this graph should have been below the x-axis, right? This graph at x equals to 24. This is the line for x equals to 24. This black graph is the line for x equals to 24. At x equals to 24, I can see that this entire green graph is actually above the x-axis. I need to get this point below the x-axis, right? So let's say if I keep on increasing the value of a or the constant a, this graph is going upwards. I need to get this below the x-axis. Let's just try reducing the value of a. So once I keep on reducing the value, once I keep on decreasing the value of a, the value of b is not changing. It is a constant number, right? The value of b is not changing, right? But if I keep on decreasing the value of a to make sure that this graph comes below the x-axis, I can say that a has to be a negative number, right? When this was 0, for example, if I put 0 over here, this graph just lies on the x-axis, but this graph cannot lie on the x-axis at x equals to 24. It has to be below the x-axis, right? So if I try to keep on decreasing the constant value of a, if I turn it into a negative number, this graph gets below the x-axis. You can say that x equals to 24, the value of y is basically a negative number. So I can say that a has to be a negative number. And if a is a negative number, it will always be lesser than b's constant value. B is not even changing, right? B has sticked itself to the value of 24. It's not even changing. So B has a constant value of 24. And A is a negative number. That is something that I've deduced from my list was. And since A is a negative number, all the negative numbers are actually less than the value of B, which is 24. All negative numbers in the world are actually less than 24.
Hello students, so this is module number 2A, the easier module 2. Now if you got the harder version of module number 2, just use the timestamp in the description of this video to access to that the harder component of module number 2 as well. Okay, so now the first question is a simple one. We have got a graph over here, and that looks like an exponential function, but we are looking to find out the value of y once time is given to us right at the bottom of the screen as 3 years, right? So I'm just looking to find out the value of y, or value in dollars, once the vehicle's life after 3 years once the vehicle was purchased, right? So x represents the years after purchase. So my value of x is given to me as 3, and this is my x value, and I can see the corresponding value of y is somewhere between 10,000 to 15,000, very close to 13,000 I guess, but it's actually somewhere between 10,000 to 15,000, and the only answer option that is in this range is answer option B. So we are going to choose answer option B for this one. The graph of a system of linear equations and a non-linear equation is shown. What is the solution x comma y to this system? Okay, so this is my solution right over here, the intersection point, and you can see the value of x at this intersection point is 4 and the value of y is 5. So I think answer option C should be the right choice for this question. Now this is a pretty straightforward question. What is the x-intercept of the graph shown? And I can see this is my x-intercept, or the point where the graph actually crosses your x-axis, and the value of y will always be 0 at this point. So I can see this number is somewhere exactly between 4 and 6, so this should be 5. So I'm going to quote my x-intercept's coordinate as 5, 0. That's mentioned in answer option B. On a street with 7 houses, 2 houses are blue. So the question tells us that we have total number of houses as 7, and out of those total number of houses, 2 houses are blue. Now if a house from this street is selected random, what is the probability of selecting a house that is blue? So favorable outcomes divided by total outcomes, that's a simple formula of probability. So since I'm looking to select, I'm looking to calculate the probability of blue houses, therefore my favorable houses would be the total number of blue houses that I have, that's 2, and my total number of possible outcomes would be 7, the total number of houses that you have in the question. So that's 2 divided by 7, that's mentioned in answer option B. Now the first thing about this graph that we know is that this has to be a linear function, right? It's a straight line, right? And since while moving from left to right, the line is going upwards. The line is going upwards, so obviously the slope of this graph has to be greater than 0. The gradient has to be a number greater than 0. You can also calculate your gradient, but there's no need to do that. You can just figure out the sign of your gradient by looking at the direction of the graph while moving from left to right. It's actually going upwards. It's a linear graph, the first thing that I know. And secondly, since the slope is greater than 0, I'm going to code this as increasing linear, right? Answer option A should be the better choice for this question. Now we have got an equation, a simple one. 6n is equals to 12. Now if I divide both of my sides by 6, I will be left with 6n divided by 6, that would be just n, and 12 divided by 6, that would be 2. So I know the value of unknown variable n. So if I put that 2 right over here, so 2 plus 4, that would come out as 6. You can just do this question without even using decimals as well, because it's pretty simple. It's a simple linear equation. You just have to find out the value of n and substitute that value of n into a desired expression. The function f is defined by f of x. So what's inside the parenthesis? That's x. And what's inside the parenthesis? That's 10. So the examiner is trying to communicate you that you have to substitute x as 10. So how I'm going to find out the value of f of 10? So I'm going to put f of 10, which means x is substituted as 10. In the equation, I'm going to substitute x as 10. So 4 times 10, that would be 40. And 40 minus 3, that would be 37. So your right answer should be answer option B. Now, if you're not familiar with how this function works, you can just even type this on decimals as well. So I'm going to type f of x, and then is equals to, so this is not x naught, this is just x, is equals to 4x minus 3. That's my equation. And then in the bottom, I will try something that I'm looking to calculate, f of 10. F of 10. Decimals gives me the value of f of 10 as 37. That's mentioned in answer option B. The graph of the function f is shown where y is equals to f of x. Now, what is the y-intercept of the graph? You just have to find out the y-intercept of the graph. And I think this is the point where the line crosses the y-axis. I can actually see this point. This number y is minus 4 and the value of x has to be 0 at this point, because at all the y-intercepts, not just for linear functions, but for any graph in the world, the value of x will always be 0 at y-intercept. So I'm going to say that my x value is 0 and my y value is minus 4, and therefore my coordinate would be 0, minus 4. That's mentioned in answer option B. What is the solution x comma y to the given system of equations? So I know what is y. Y is actually 28. So you can just put 28 in the top equation. So this becomes 28 is equals to 12x minus 20. And then I'm going to add 20 on both sides. Once I add 20 on my right hand side, negative 20 cancels out. So 28 plus 20, that's 48, is equals to 12x. Now I'm going to divide both of my sides by 12. So 12x divided by 12 is just x, and 48 divided by 12 would be just 4. So I know that my value of x is 4, and my value of y was already given to me, right? That was 28, right? So I'm going to quote my coordinate. My final answer for the coordinate would be 4, 28. That's answer option A. Now, if you're not good in solving linear equations, you can just type this on your decimals. Y is equals to 12x minus 28. I'm looking to find out the intersection points of these two graphs. One of them is y is equals to 12x minus 28, and the other one of them is y is equals to 28. And I'm getting my intersection point right over here for the blue and the green graph. That's my intersection point right over here. And it tells me a particular two thing. Oh, this was 12x minus 28, not 28. It was 20. 12x minus 20. This gives me my intersection point exactly as 4, 28, which was something that I initially marked as answer option A. What is the range of the 7 scores shown? So range, how do you calculate range in statistics? Range is always highest value minus lowest value of the set. So what is the highest value that you see in your set? I think the highest value is 52 and the lowest value is 23. So I can just write this down as 52 minus 23, right? So what is 52 minus 23? That's 29. So 29 should be the right answer for this question. If you want to use decimals for this one, let's say you've got a lot of numbers, you can use decimals as well, but I don't think so it's really worth it, right? A is equals to, let's write everything inside a square bracket. So 23, 27, 27 again, 32, and then 35, 36, and then finally 52, right? These are the values in set A that I have. And then I can type, since I know the range formula, that's always highest value of the set minus lowest value of the set. So I can write max of A and then minus, okay, I'm going to do capital A. Or you can just put small a over here. So max A, or you can use capital A for both the functions. Max A minus minimum A. So I'm going to type minimum A. So that's my range right at the bottom of the screen. That's 29 through the decimals approach as well. The graph of a system of linear equations is shown and the solution to the system is x comma y. What is the value of x? That's your solution. The intersection point is basically a solution. And I can see the value of x at my intersection point is basically 4. So I'm going to quote my right answer as just 4. The function h is defined by h of x is equals to 8 divided by 5x plus 6. And we are looking to find out h of 2. Since this was x inside the parenthesis and now it's 2, it actually means that I would have to substitute x as 2. So how I'm going to find out the value of h of 2? That's a pretty simple question. 8 divided by, I'm going to put x as 2, so 5 times 2 plus 6. So 5 times 2, 10. 10 plus 6 is always 16. So you have 8 divided by 16. You can just quote this down in the form of fractions as well as 1 over 2. Or if you wanted to quote this in the form of decimals as well, you can quote this as 0.5. So this is 0.5. Now, if you want to do this question in decimals, so you're going to start with telling your decimals what is your h of x was. So h of x is basically 8 divided by 5x plus 6. I'm going to type 8 divided by 5x plus 6 at the bottom. And then since I'm looking to calculate h of 2 comes out as 0.5. That's the answer that I was getting earlier. We have got a linear function in this question, and the question tells you that the linear function has a slope of 39. So obviously, it actually means that we all know that the equation of the line standard form is y is equals to mx plus c. So the coefficient of term x has to be a slope, and that's given to you as 39. This is not 39. This is not 39. This is the coefficient of x is 1 over here. This is just 39, right? So I can see the coefficient of term x or my slope quoted as 39. Or you can also see it like this way, that your y-intercept should come out as 0. What is your y-intercept? Whenever you see a coordinate on any linear, on any graph, whatever the value of, once the value of x is 0, whatever the value of y that you see over here, that's your y-intercept, right? So c value should just be 0. It cannot be minus 39. That's even worse, right? Answer option C is the most worst answer in all of these 4 answer options. It is giving me a different gradient. It's also giving me a different y-intercept, which is why this can never be my choice, right? But for answer option D, I can see a c value of 0. This is 39x plus 0. But if you want to do this question in decimals, you can start with putting everything on the table first. But it's not really recommended to do this question in decimals because it's a pretty easy one. 0 and 0, that's the first coordinate that you know. You also know the slope of the line, so I'm going to type m is equals to 39. And I'm going to tell my decimals to regress s for the function y. So y1 under the regression symbol, mx1. And then you're going to type mx1 plus c. So c comes out automatically as 0. That tells you that your equation would be y is equals to 39. That was 39x plus 0. And that's mentioned in answer option D in terms of f of x. For a snowstorm in a certain town, the minimum rate of snowfall recorded was 0.6 inches per hour and the maximum rate was 1.8 inches per hour, which inequality is true for all values of s, where s represents a rate of snowfall. That means something, the amount of rainfall that you observe in 1 hour. That is what the word rate represents. The examiner even defines the word rate in inches per hour. So we have to create an inequality over here. It's a pretty simple one. We know what is the minimum value of snowfall that you can expect. That's given to you at the top as 0.6. And what is the maximum value of snowfall in inches per hour that you're going to expect? That's given to you at the top as 1.8. So that's a compound inequality. That's a compound inequality that you're going to create, or a dual inequality that you're going to create to represent this entire scenario. And I think that's mentioned in answer option D as the right choice. The function f defined by f of t is equals to 14t plus 9 gives the estimated length. So this function f gives you the estimated length in inches of a wine plant, and t represents something in months after Taiwan purchased it. Now, I have discussed in one of my recorded lectures, for any linear function, the y-intercepts normally represents the initial value. For example, when the question wants you to figure out the meaning or the interpretation of the number 9 in the context, I know that what does 9 represents. 9 is my y-intercept. That's the constant at the end in a linear function. That always represents my y-intercept, right? And at y-intercepts, the value of x is always 0. So you can say the value of time, which is in months, that should be 0, right? So when I'm saying that 9 is my y-intercept, or 9 is the value of estimated length in inches, I'm going to say that this value of 9 occurs once time is 0. Or you can say, and when you're putting actually time as 0, it actually means that this was the height in inches once Tevon actually purchased this plant. You can even look at this way, that even if you put 0 over here, 14 times 0 would be 0, plus 9 would give you a 9. So how does 9 comes up? 9 comes up once you put time as 0. So this actually means that when he initially purchased it, so after spending 0 months, which actually means that when he initially purchased it, the height was already at a level of 9 inches. And I think that's the only thing that mentions this thing correctly. That's answer option D. Answer option A says that Tevon will keep the wine plant for 9 months. Now, let me tell you, 9 represents the value of a y-intercept, and y's unit is something in inches. So I'm going to end the word 9 with something in inches, 9 inches, right? Not 9 months. So this is answer option A should be definitely incorrect. Now, answer option B says the wine plant is expected to grow 9 inches. The inches word is correct, but 9 is not the definition of gradient. 9 is my y-intercept. In answer option B is actually describing you the definition of gradient, right? And gradient is not the number 9, it's actually the number 14, right? In the equation, in the linear equation that we see. Now, answer option C says that wine plant is expected to grow to a maximum length of 9 inches. I do not even know the maximum value of this linear function because it could be infinite, right? Linear function does not even turns. Once it moves into a particular direction, it would keep on moving, right? So I don't even know the maximum value of this linear function, right? So and the maximum and minimum question normally occurs once you're dealing with the parabola for the SAT math. Now this has to be incorrect again. So A, B, and C, all of them are incorrect. Answer option D should have to be the right choice for this one. So we have got a right triangle. I know the base, I know the height, and it's a pretty easy question. Area of any triangle is always base times height divided by 2, right? So you know what is your base, that's 5. You also know what is your height, that's 3. So I'm going to multiply 5 by 3 divided by 2. That comes out as 15 divided by 2 as 7.5. That's the right answer for this question. You can write 15 over 2 in terms of fractions as well. The table shows 3 values of x and the corresponding values of y, which equation represents the linear relationship between x and y. So let's try to figure out the gradient first. It's always y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So for example, I can choose any of these two coordinates. The gradient would still be same. For example, if I choose the first two columns, I see y2 as 16 and y1 as 11. So what is 16 minus 11? How much rise you're getting? You're getting a rise of 5 units. How much run you're getting? That would be x2 minus x1, 2 minus 1 as 1. So I'm getting a gradient of 5 divided by 1 as just 5. And since all of these answer options are in the standard form of y is equals to mx plus c, this shows me a gradient of 5. This shows me a gradient of 5, but answer option C cannot be correct because it quotes the gradient's value as just 6, not 5. So I'm going to go with answer option A or answer option B. You can just find out the entire equation. You can use the trial and hit method strategy as well. So once I put 1 in the question, I should get my value of y as 11. For example, if I put 1 over here, 5 times 1 would be 5 and 5 plus 6 would be 11. So this is satisfying. So this has to be the right choice. But when I put 1 in answer option B, 5 times 1 is 5. 5 plus 11, that comes out as 16, not 11, so which is why answer option B should be incorrect. But if you want to create complete equation, you know the value of your gradient, you can just use any random coordinate, for example x1 and y11, and substitute it in this standard form. So y is 11 and m is what? That's 5 and x is 1 and plus c. So this is 5 times 1 is 5. If you subtract 5 on both sides, you will get the value of c as 11 minus 5 is 6. So that's your equation. Y is equals to 5x plus c, which come out as 6. That's 6 written over here. Or you can use the Desmos table version. You just put everything on the table. Since this is just a linear function, for linear function, you just need any two random coordinates. For example, you can choose any two, whichever two you like, whichever two you're most comfortable with. For example, I'm going to choose the first two ones, 1 and 11. You can put the third one as well if you want to, but since linear functions have got two unknown constants, m and c, providing just two coordinates would be enough for Desmos to regress it for the linear function. And then 2 comma 16, that's 2 and then 16. And I'm going to access this step right from the top, linear regression. That's my equation. Y is equals to 5x plus 6. That's mentioned in answer option A. A solution to the given system of equations is x comma y, where x is something greater than 0. What is the value of x? Since I know the value of y, That's 4x. I'm going to put y as 4x. So 4x equated with x squared minus 12. Let's try to do this question manually first, because some people are very comfortable with doing these things manually. Yes, I think it's a decimal question, just to avoid any silly errors. X squared minus 4x. If I subtract 4x on both sides, I will have this equation. Now I will do factorization on this quadratic equation. So I know that I have to create a product of 12, and I know 6 times 2 is 12, so I'm going to write minus 6x plus 2x at the center to break the middle term. And then if I take x as the highest common factor from the first two terms, x minus 6 comes out, and plus 2 as the highest common factor from the next two terms, x minus 6 stays. And then if I take again x minus 6 as the highest common factor from these two terms, I will be left with x plus 2 on the inside. So I have my factors. Once x minus 6 gets equated with 0, you will get the value of x as 6, and once x plus 2 gets equated with 0, you will get the value of x as minus 2, right? But since we're looking for positive values of x, the right answer should be just 6 minus 2 would be incorrect, right? But if you want to do this question in decimals, you can start typing the first equation, y is equals to 4x, and the second one as y is equals to x squared. Y is equals to x squared, and then you have minus 12, so I'm going to put minus 12. That's my intersection point. So I'm seeing my intersection point at xx and x minus 2. Since I'm only allowed to quote any positive values of x, I'm going to go with x is equals to 6 as the right choice for this question. At a particular track meet, the ratio of coaches to athletes is 1:6. So what's the ratio given to us? Coaches to athletes, that's 1/26. Coaches at the top and athletes at the bottom. And the question says that they're ex-coaches at the track meet, and we're looking to find out number of athletes. Let's name that as A. So I'm looking to find out the value of A, not the value of X. So if I just cross multiply everything, if I multiply by A on both sides and multiply by 26 on both sides, so A times 1 would be A, and the A's value would come out as 26 times X. So I know the number of athletes would be 26x. I just have to quote the expression, not the equation. So my correct expression would be 26x, and that's mentioned in answer option B. The function f is defined by the given equation, and the equation can be rewritten as f of x is equals to 1 plus p over 100 whole power x, where p is a constant. Now, which of the following is closest to the value of p? Now, since I have to write this f of x in the form of this equation, one thing that I can notice in the original equation is that if I write 1.84 raised to the power x over 4 like this, so I can keep 1 over 4 over here, and then I can just put a whole power of x right at the top. So this is just whole power of x right at the top, similar to this form, right? So I would have to do 1.84 raised to the power 1 over 4. So what is 1.84 raised to the power 1 over 4? So I'm just calculating this through my decimals, 0.25. You can just type this on your scientific calculators as well. This comes out as 1.16467. So I can say this number is 1.16467 whole power x. But since I have to write this in the form of 1 plus something, and I can write this as 1 plus 0.16467 whole power x. And then since I have to get 100 in my denominator, I will just multiply 1 at the bottom by 100, which is why I would have to multiply 100 at the top as well. So this would become 1 plus 16.467 over 100 whole power x, and this gives you the most approximate or the most closest value for the unknown constant p as 16. So that should be my answer. But since this is an equivalent expression question, you can always do this question in decimals. You can start with 1.84 raised to the power x over 4. So I'm going to type 1.84 again. I think decimals would be a lot easier way of doing this question. So 1.84 raised to the power x1 divided by 4. Since I will try to regress this for the unknown constant p, which is why I would have to put x1 and then regression symbol, and then inside you're going to put 1 plus p divided by 100 and then whole power x. So this would be 1 plus, not is equals to 1 plus p divided by 100 and then whole power x. So I'm going to put just a power of x right at the top, x1. Okay, so since I know that this entire left hand side is actually equivalent to entire right hand side for all values of x, I would have to provide this instruction to my decimals that test this regression for a lot of values of x. You can just type x1 equals to random, and let's say you write a number inside bracket, let's say 12. So decimals is going to test this entire system for 12 different values, random. Okay, rand, R-A-N, and then DOM. Okay, so Desmos is going to test this entire system for 12 different values of x, and after Desmos is done testing this entire system for 12 different values of x, Desmos quotes you the value of p as 16.46742, and that's mentioned in answer option A. The question says that QPR is similar to triangle STR, and you have some of the lengths given to you. ST, starting with ST, that's given to you as 14, so I'm going to put 14 over here. And then QP is given to you as 15, so I'm going to put 15 right over here. And then PR and QR are already given to you. PR, that's 20. And then QR, that's 25. So since these two triangles are similar triangles, I'm going to use the ratio. Big versus small, big versus small, or you can say L1 divided by L2 is equals to L3 over L4. So I'm looking to find out the value of SR, which actually represents the hypotenuse of my smaller triangle. So I'm going to create equation small SR, that's the side of my smaller triangle, versus big. What's the height? Since this is, this is the hypotenuse of your smaller triangle, so I'm going to compare it with the hypotenuse of my larger triangle that's given to me as 25. So that's small versus big equals to small versus big again. Or you can say L1 divided by L2 is equals to L3 over L4. So I'm going to use known pairs now. Since I know the value of ST in my smaller triangle, that's 14, and it's actually the height of your smaller triangle. So the height of my larger triangle is provided to me as 15, so I'm going to put 15 over here. So this is my ratio, and you can see it like this, that since you extracted ST from here, which was the first two letters in this triangle, so you're going to extract the first two letters from the second triangle as well, which is basically QP, right? And QP was 15, right? So now, in order to find out SR, I just have to multiply this fraction 14 over 15 by 25. So you can just do it on Desmos. SR is equals to, what is 14 divided by 15 multiplied by 25? So 14 divided by 15 and then times 25. So I'm going to put times 25. So I'm getting my answer as 23.333333. If I try to convert this in the form of fractions, I'm getting my answer as 70 divided by 3. That's my right answer, right? But I just have to figure out which of these answer options depicts this number 70 divided by 3. The examiner have deliberately left these answers by not converting them in simplified form, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to type the first answer option 350 divided by 15, and let's see what is this number 350 divided by 15. This is again coming out as 23 point never ending 3s. If you try to convert this in the form of fractions, that's equal to 70 over 3. So I'm going to go with answer option A as the right choice for this question on similar triangles. In triangle ABC, angle B is a right angle, so this is my right angle triangle, and you have to be careful in deciding which one of the three vertices stays at the 90-degree angle. The question clearly says that B is a right angle. The length of the side AB, let's just name this as A and this as C. So I know one of the legs, that's 10 under root 37. The second leg BC is provided to me as 24 under root 37. And I'm looking to find out the hypotenuse of this right triangle. So how can I do this? I'm going to apply obviously Pythagoras theorem, A square plus B square equals to C square. So I'm going to type 10 under root 37 whole square, and then plus b square would be 24 under root 37 whole square equals to your hypotenuse square, that would be AC square. Now if you're doing this question using a scientific calculators are smart enough to get you to give you the answer in the exact radical forms, but Desmos do not give answers in radicals. They just convert those radical values into decimals, right? So I'm going to start with 10 under root 37. If let's say if I'm doing this on Desmos, so 10, and then I'm going to put 10 under root 37. So I'm going to access root components, so root 37, and then bracket close, and then square at the top, and then plus. Then you have 24 under root 37, so 24, and then under root 37 again, so 37 inside the square root, and then whole square close. Okay, so let me just put a square at the top. So this comes out as 25,012. 10 under root 37 whole square plus 24 under root 37 whole square comes out as 25,012. So this is 25012 is equals to AC square. Now you would have to find out the square root of the number 25,012, and that would lead you to your side AC. So what's the square root of the number 25,012? So let's say 25,000, 1, 2. That's my square root 158.15. So which means that this side length is 158.15. Now, if you would be doing this on using a scientific calculators, you would have got your answer right away in radical form. But if, let's say, if I don't have a scientific calculator, I'm doing it on Desmos, everything I'm doing on Desmos, so I can just explore answer option A. For example, answer option A says 14 under root 37. So let's see what is 14 under root 37 equivalent to. So 14 under root 37 is actually equivalent to 85.18, not 158.15. So I'm just going to replace 14 with 26 because that's my answer option B. So 26 under root 37 is exactly equivalent to 158.15, which is why the right answer to this question should be answer option B. So this is module number 2B, the harder version of module number 2 for practice test number 5. And if you guys did not got this module and instead you got module number 2A, you can access module number 2A from the timestamp of this video. Now let's start with the first question. It says that a triangle has legs with 11 centimeters and 9 centimeters, and I'm looking to find out the hypotenuse of this triangle. So I'm going to apply Pythagoras theorem for this one. It's pretty simple. So let's say I've got a right triangle. Considering it's question number 1, it has to be a simple one. So we have got one of the legs equivalent to us, given to us as a triangle has legs with 11 centimeters and 9 centimeters. The second leg is of 9 centimeters. And we're looking to find out the hypotenuse of this triangle. So that's my C. So the formula that represents Pythagoras theorem is always a square plus b square equals to c square, right? And I know the value of a, that's 11, and square, and plus b, that's 9 square, is equals to c square. And then you have got 121 plus 9 square, that's 202, is equals to your hypotenuse square. And eventually if you take square root on both sides, the value of c would come out as under root 202, and that's mentioned in answer option A for this one. So that's your first question is basically on Pythagoras theorem, a simple one. Question number 2 says that we have got a linear function h and the graph of y is equals to h of x passes through these 2 points. You can easily do this question in Desmos, but let's have a look at the manual approach. I'm going to find out the gradient first using the formula y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So let's take y2 as 25 and y1 as 21. So 25 minus 21. This is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. That would be 9 minus 7. 9 minus 7. So that's 25 minus 21 is 4 and 9 minus 7 is 2 and 4 divided by 2 is basically 2. So I've got a gradient of 2, which actually means that answer option D gives me a gradient of 9, or the coefficient of x as 9. C gives me that 7, and answer option A gives me the gradient of the line as half. So I'm going to go with answer option B. But if you want to find out the y-intercept as well, you can easily do that, because we know the standard form of the equation of the line is always y is equals to mx plus c. Let's choose this coordinate 7, 21. So I'm putting 21 for y. And for gradient, I'm going to put 2, and then x comes out as 7, and then plus c. So 2 times 7, that would be 14, and 21 minus 14, that would be 7. So that's your answer. Y is equals to 2x plus 7, or h of x equals to 2x plus 7. But I think this question should be done on Desmos. I think Desmos would be the more quicker method, considering the nature of the numbers. These are relatively bigger numbers, so you might make some petty errors in this question. So just to be safe, I think Desmos would be the good option for this one. So I'm going to go on the table mode, and then I'm going to try both the coordinates available with me. The first one is 7 and the second one is 21, and then 9 comma 25, that's my second coordinate, and I'm going to do the automatic linear regression right from the top. That's my equation. Y is equals to 2x plus 7, and that should be the answer for this one. A company that produces socks wants to estimate the percent of the socks produced in a typical week that are defective, and 310 was our sample size, and sample proportion was 12% of all the socks produced by the company in this week are defective, and your MOE is given to you as 3.62%. Now, there's a specific formula every time when you see a margin of error question, that the sample proportion plus minus margin of error percentage would give you the most appropriate conclusion regarding your sample proportion in a given system, in a given research. You can say, I'm going to write SP over here, the sample proportion plus minus margin of error, right? That's always the best conclusion, right? So in this question, I have got my sample proportion as 12%, right? So 12% right over here, plus minus margin of error. And my margin of error is basically 3.62%. If you add 12% plus 3.62%, you will get this as 15.62%. So your upper limit would be 15.62%. That's mentioned right over here. And 12 minus 3.60%, again on your calculators, that would give you 8.38%. So your lower limit would be 8.38%. So I think the most appropriate conclusion would be it is plausible, using specifically the word plausible. You can never be absolute about your research, about your conclusions drawn from your sample proportions. You can never be absolute about this fact. You can never be absolute about anything, because you have taken a sample over here. You have not conducted your research on the entire population, which is obviously not possible, right? So I'm going to use the word plausible, that between 8.38 and 15.62% of the socks are defective. I know that answer option D is also not wrong. It is plausible that more than 15.62% of the socks are defective. Just to clear up the concept, yes, it is yes, it is actually possible that more than 15.62% of the socks are defective, but the chances of this thing happening are very low. So it's quite unlikely that more than 15.62% of the socks will be defective or outside this range of 8.38 and 15.62%. So I think the most appropriate conclusion would be answer option B. Answer option A and C are incorrect just because they're absolute conclusions. You can never draw absolute conclusions. You have to use the word approximate or plausible or likeliness in all of these scenarios and all of these sample questions, and they are only used in answer option D and answer option D. But amongst those two answer options B and D, I think answer option B has to be the best choice, because it's highly likely that the actual proportions should come out somewhere between 8.38 and 15.62%, or in between this range, which was created through this formula that sample proportion is always plus minus margin of error that you have in the question. A truck can hold a maximum weight of 5,630 pounds. Now, during one trip, the truck will be used to haul a 190-pound piece of equipment as well as several crates. Okay, so that's one thing, 190-pound piece of equipment and some crates. Some of these crates were 25 pounds and the other was 62 pounds each. Now, X represents the quantity of 25-pound crates and Y represents the quantity of 62-pound crates. So if I have got X crates, where each crate weighs 25 pounds. So obviously, the total weight of those X crates would be 25 multiplied by X. And I've got Y crates where every single one of them has a weight of 62 pounds. So obviously, the total weight would be 62Y. If you add these two numbers, you will get the total weight of the crates plus the weight of the equipment, because you're also carrying one piece of equipment and that weighs 190 pounds altogether. Now the question says that the sum of all of these weights can have a maximum value of 5,630. So this entire amount cannot go beyond the number 5630. It could be equal to 5630. It should stay below the number 5630. So I'm going to write less than or equal to 5630. Now if you subtract 190 from both sides, minus 190 from here and minus 190 from here, just to simplify this linear inequality, you will get 25x plus 62y. And then I think 5630 minus 190 would be, I think, 5530, 543, 5440. It would be 5440, 5440. Never do these calculations without your calculator on the actual exam. Now, I think that's pretty much correctly mentioned in answer option A. That should be the right choice for this question. What is the solution x comma y to the given system of equations? Genuinely a desirable question, but let's try to do this question manually just to build that algebraic fluency very much required in your SAT papers. So if I try to make y the subject of the formula in the first equation, what is my y? Y is equivalent to 13 plus 9x. Let's just substitute this value of y in my second equation. That's 5x is equals to, and then twice of the number y. Y is 13 plus 9x, already calculated. Let's just simplify everything for the unknown variable x. So 5x is equals to, that should be 26, and 2 times 9 would be 18x. For the simplifying everything, we subtract 5x from both sides, we will get this as 18x minus 5x as 13x, and subtracting 26 from both sides, you will be left with a minus 26 over here. Dividing by 13 both sides, you will get the value of x as minus 26 divided by 13, that's minus 2. And the only answer option that tells me that x is equal to minus 2 is answer option C. But if you want to figure out your y value as well, you can just substitute x as minus 2 right in the y function, and this would give you y is equals to 13 plus 9 times minus 2, right? Y is equals to 13 plus 9 times minus 2. You can type this on your scientific calculators as well, but still, either way, you will get your y value as minus 5. But I think the most effective approach of doing these type of questions would be the Desmos approach. Desmos is going to tell you the intersection points, right? Y minus 9x, and then I've got is equals to 13, and my second equation is 5x is equals to 2y, and I'm looking to find out the intersection points of these two lines. Here are my intersection points. They're perfectly intersecting at minus 2 comma minus 5, and which is why answer option C should be the right one. What is the range of the 7 scores shown? So range, how do you calculate range in statistics? Range is always highest value minus lowest value of the set. So what is the highest value that you see in your set? I think the highest value is 52 and the lowest value is 23. So I can just write this down as 52 minus 23, right? So what is 52 minus 23? That's 29. So 29 should be the right answer for this question. If you want to use Desmos for this one, let's say you've got a lot of numbers, you can use Desmos as well, but I don't think so it's really worth it, right? A is equals to, let's write everything inside a square bracket. So 23 comma 27 comma 30, 27 again comma 32, and then comma 35 comma 36, and then finally comma 52, right? These are the values in set A that I have, and then I can type, since I know the range formula, that's always highest value of the set minus lowest value of the set. So I can write max of A and then minus, okay, I'm going to do capital A, or you can just put small a over here. So max A, or you can use capital A for both the functions, max A minus minimum A. So I'm going to type minimum A. So that's my range right at the bottom of the screen. That's 29 through the Desmos approach as well. Two customers purchased the same kind of bread and eggs at a store. The first customer actually paid $12.45 for one loaf of bread and 2 dozen eggs. So let's say X represents the number of loaves of bread that I've bought. So for example, when I'm buying one loaf of bread, so I'm just buying one eggs and 2 dozen of eggs. Let's say Y represents the number of dozen of eggs that I'm buying. So I'll be writing 2y, x plus 2y, and the cost of these two terms would be x plus 2y is equals to $12.45, right? Okay, so I've just represented x as the cost of one loaf of bread, not the quantity of one loaf of bread. X represents the cost of one loaf of bread, and y represents the cost of 1 dozen eggs. So obviously 2 dozen eggs would cost you 2y, right? X plus 2y is equals to 12.45. Again, a very much Desmosable question. The second customer paid $19.42 for loaves of bread. So I assume that x represents the cost of one loaf of bread. So obviously for 4 loaves of bread, that should be 4x. And 1 dozen eggs, that would be just y. And then the entire thing would be equated with 19.42, right? Now, we are looking to find out the cost in dollars of 1 dozen eggs. So I've just assumed y as the cost of 1 dozen eggs. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to multiply my top equation by 4, and I'm going to subtract the bottom equation from my top equation. So 4x minus 4x completely cancels out, and then you have got 4 times 2y as 8y, and 8y minus y, that's actually 7y, right? And then you have 4 times 12.45, right? So you can just type 4 times 12.5 on your calculator as well. So let's see what is 4 times 12.45. I'm just typing this on my calculator. So 4 times 12.45. That's the next thing that I have to do. To avoid any silly errors, that's 49.8. I'm going to subtract 19.42 from 49.8. So 49.8 minus 19.42, that comes out as 30.38. So I've got 30.38 right over here, 30.38, and now I'm going to divide everything by 7, right? So the value of y comes out as 30.38 divided by 7. So I know the value of 1 dozen, I know the cost of 1 dozen of x, that's 4.34, and that's mentioned in answer option D. But again, I think that's genuinely a Desmosable question. question, right? You should be typing these equations in Desmos and should look for intersection points. So we have got two questions, almost back-to-back two questions in simultaneous equations. So I'm going to type x plus 2y, x plus 2y, and then is equals to 12.45. So that's my equation, 12.45. And then the second equation would be, I think that was 4x plus y is equals to 9.42. So 4x plus y is equals to 19.42, and I'm looking to find out my intersection point. Specifically, I'm looking to find out the value of variable y at my intersection point. That's 4.34 right over here, and that's mentioned in answer option D. If the given equations are graphed in the xy plane, and how many points do the graph of the equations intersect? Considering the second quadratic equation is given to me in completing square form, I can very quickly create a rough sketch of the second quadratic equation. So I know that the value of a on the outside is a negative number, so this has to be a maximum turning point parabola, or a parabola which should open up downwards. And I can also see the vertex of this parabola. Just change the sign of this number and keep this number as it is. 18 comma 15 is your turning point, right? So let's say I've got an 18 right over here, and let's say I've got a 15 right over here. This is the shape of my parabola, right? 18 comma 15, and then I've got a line y is equals to 18. So 18 would be somewhere over here on y. And how do y is equals to 18 lines look like? They are always horizontal lines. So I think my line is not even touching my parabola, so it's not even intersecting, right? So there will be no solutions of these two equations. So when the question says, if the given equation, the graph in the xy plane, at how many points do the graph of the equations intersect? None. They're not actually intersecting, right? So I'm going to go with answer option D. But again, I really believe that this is again a Desmos question. So you're going to type both the equations, y is equals to 18 at the top, and y is equals to minus 3 times x minus 18 whole square plus 15 at the bottom. So y is equals to, and then you have got minus 3 times x minus 18, and then whole square at the top, and then on the outside you have a plus 15, and you can actually see that at how many points these two graphs are intersecting. They're not even intersecting. That's the maximum turning point of a parabola, and your line is way above that maximum turning point, so they're not intersecting, which is why we're going to go with answer option D, or 0 intersection points, as the right choice. According to the given system of equations is x comma y, a solution to the given system of equations is x comma y. What is the greatest possible value of x? If I want to do this question manually, I won't recommend you guys to do this question manually. But let's say if I'm doing this manually, y is equals to x plus 9. I'm going to put y value. I'm going to equate both the y's. I have the equation x plus 9 is equals to x square plus 16x plus 63, right? So let's just subtract x and 9 from both sides. So if I subtract x and 9 from both sides, I will be left with 0 over here. This would be 16x minus 1x, that would be 15x, and I think 63 minus 9, I think that's 54, right? 54 equals to 0. So I can do the quadratic factorization, x square plus 15x plus 54. So I'm going to write x square plus 54. So I think 54 is 6 times 9. 6 times 9 gives you 54, and 6 plus 9 gives you 15x. So I can say this should be 9x, and this should be plus 6x. And if I take x as the common factor, I will be left with x plus 9, and I will be left with plus 6 times x plus 9. So I will have the factorized form as x plus 9 times x plus 6 equals to 0, right? And if I equate the first factor x plus 9 by 0, I will get one of the roots as x equals to minus 9, and the second roots would be x equals to minus 6, right? X equals to minus 9 and x equals to minus 6 are the two solutions, are the two intersection points, and we're looking for the greatest possible value of x, which is why I think x equals to minus 6 should be the right choice. But again, I would not recommend you guys to do this question manually. Instead, if I would be doing this question in my exam, I would have typed it. I would have typed this entire equation, y is equals to x plus 9. I do it manually just to make sure that if anyone has tried this manually, he or she would be able to find out his or her mistake or any particular error for which that person has reviewed to this video. So x square plus 16x plus 63. So that's my equation. And sometimes I really recommend you guys to do things manually, just to give yourself that level of algebraic fluency which is very much required in your DSAT papers. X square plus 16x plus 63. Now if I see the intersection points right over here, I can see one of the intersection points as this one. So this is x equals to minus 6 and this is x equals to minus 9. But I was looking for the higher value of x, and that is basically minus 6. I'm going to go with minus 6, or answer option A is the right choice. In the xy plane, line P has a slope of minus 5 over 3, and it also has an x-intercept of minus 6 comma 0, and we are looking to find out the y-intercept, the value of y, the y-intercept. So you can write this down as 0 comma y. We all know what are y-intercepts, where the value of x is always 0. So what if I apply the gradient formula y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, because I know the gradient's value, right? So if I do y2 minus y1, that would be y minus 0. I'm going to do y minus 0 divided by x2 minus x1, that would be 0 minus minus 6, and 0 minus minus 6 would be positive 6, equals to minus 5 over 3. And you just have to multiply by 6 on both of the sides, right? So y minus 0 would be y, and if you multiply 6 on both sides, you will be having minus 5 over 3 multiplied by 6. I think that should come out as minus 10. So that's your y value. That's your answer. But again, I think you can do this question in Desmos. If you're not good with linear functions, you should be good with linear functions if you're appearing for SAT, because that's 35% of the course, right? So minus 6 comma 0. So minus 6 comma 0. And then I'm going to type this on my Desmos. I'm going to provide this instruction to my Desmos that take my m as minus 5 over 3. You can do it afterwards as well, or you can do it before as well. So m is equals to minus 5 over 3. That's my m value, minus 5 over 3. And I will go with the manual regression y1 is actually equivalent to mx1, and then you have got a plus c, right? So you get your value of c. That's your y-intercept, right? That's your y-intercept. You can just have a look. If you don't know that c is your y-intercept, which you should know if you're appearing for the SAT paper, but if you don't know, that's a y-intercept. The line, the point where the line hits your y-axis, that's your y value of minus 10 right on the graph. So I think the answer to this question should be minus 10 through both the approaches. How many solutions does the equation 12 times x minus 3, even if you expand it, there's no need to expand it, but just to understand what is happening in the question, 12 times x, that's 12x, 12 times 3, that's 36, equals to minus 3x, and then 12 times minus 3 as minus 36. So I think this is the third lecture of my recorded course for SAT, where we learned that whenever you see coefficient of variables on both sides not equal to each other, in all those scenarios you will have only one solution, one unique solution for the two lines that would be creating if you just deal these two different sides as two different equations. So how many solutions? Just one solution. So I'm going to go exactly one, since the coefficient of variables are not actually equivalent to each other on your left hand side with that of your right hand side. One of them has a coefficient of 12 and the other one of them has a coefficient of minus 3, right? But even if you want to solve it, just to understand what is happening in this question, so you're going to add 3x on both sides. This would give you, if I add 3x on both sides, this would give me 15x, and then minus 36 would be equal to minus 36. I think if you add 36 on both sides, both of them are going to cancel each other. We'll be left with 15x equals to 0. And if you divide both of the sides by 15, you will get the value of x as 0 divided by 15 as 0. So you're getting one solution whose value is 0. The examiner does not want you to figure out the value of that solution, but was specifically asking how many solutions will you get for the unknown variable x. I'm just getting just one value of x as 0. But if you want to understand this question in Desmos, let's just take these two sides as two different equations. For example, I can go with the first one, 12 times as x minus 3, and I'm going to name this as y. And the second one, the right hand side, that's my second y. So y is equals to minus 3 times x plus 2 plus 12, sorry, x plus 12. So let's see how many solutions, how many intersection points these two graphs are getting. So if you just scroll down, you will see that these two linear functions are actually intersecting at just one point, and where the value of x was 0, right? But the examiner does not wanted us to quote the value of x, but instead we were looking to find out the number of intersection points and number of solutions for this particular question. So you can do this on Desmos, but I think doing this manually would be a lot quicker than just typing everything on Desmos. Now the question says that Kelani used fabric measuring 5 yards in length to make each suit from men's square. The relationship between the number of suits that Kelani made, x, and the total length of fabric that she purchased, y, in yards is represented by the equation y minus 5x equals to 6. You're actually finding out the difference of two things. What is your y? what does y represents? Y represents the total yards that she purchased, right? And what does your variable x represented? I think variable x represented the relationship between the number of suits that Kalyani made. X represented number of suits, right? And if someone is multiplying x by 5 to convert this entire thing into yards, because y is something in yards. Y is something in yards. So you only subtract yards from yards. You do not subtract yards from number of suits, right? So if y is something in yards, this entire 5x term is also something in yards. So when the question says that x is not something in yards, it's x represents something in suits, and you're actually multiplying x by 5, it actually means that one suit requires 5 yards. So if one single suit, so x suits would require you 5x yards altogether. So you purchased y yards and she consumed 5x yards for her x suits, and then the difference of those two numbers comes out as 6. So the difference of what two quantities? The amount that she purchased and the amount that she has used out of the amount that she has purchased actually. The difference of those two numbers is basically 6. So I can say that she is left with 6 yards. She is still left with 6 yards with her, because that I think that's the best representation of 6, right? Kalyani made 6 suits. No, that should be incorrect. 6 is something in yards, not something in suits, right? The difference of yards and yards should come out in yards, not in suits, right? Kalyani purchased a total of 6 yards of fabric. No, the examiner clearly said that Kalyani purchased a total of y yards of fabric, so which is my answer option B should be incorrect. Kalyani used a total of 6 yards to fabric to make the suits. No, she did not use 6 yards of fabric. Instead, she used 5x yards of fabric to create x suits, right? So answer option C should also be incorrect. Now, Kalyani purchased 6 yards more fabric than she used to make the suits, and which is why she is still left with 6 yards, because she already had a surplus of 6 yards with her than what she was going to consume, right? So I'm going to go with answer option D as my right choice for this question. So which quadratic equation has no real solutions? I think that's a question on discriminant. I think the easier approach would be to do this on Desmos. But I think that's pretty much a question on Desmos b squared minus 4ac. You're going to, if you want to do this question manually or using a scientific calculator, you're going to find out the discriminant value for every single answer option. For example, the first one has the b value as 14. So I'm going to write 14 squared minus 4 times a is 1 and c is minus 49. And you're going to check that what type of answer you would be getting. I think it would be a positive answer, right? Because minus 4 times minus 49 would be a positive number, plus 14 squares would also be a positive number. So I'll be having a greater than 0 answer, which means I will be having 2 real solutions for this one. I'm actually looking for no real solutions, right? So let's move on to the next one. So that's minus 14 as your b value. So I'm going to put b square as minus 14 square. Minus 4 times a value is 1 and c value is actually 49, right? Let's just figure out what is this coming out. So minus 14 square is 196, and 196 minus 4 times 49, right? That comes out as exactly 0. That comes out as exactly 0, right? So it actually means that we will have one real solution for this quadratic equation. So this could not be my right choice again. So let's move on to the third one. So it says 5x squared minus 14x minus 49. So that would be minus 14 squared as 196, minus 4a is 5. And c is minus 49. I think it will again be a positive number, because minus times minus is positive and 196 is again a positive number. So that will again be greater than 0. So we'll have 2 real solutions again. But for the last one, if I put minus 14 square, that's my b square, and then minus 4 times a value is 5 and c value is 49. Now if you type everything on your calculator, you're going to do 196, because minus 14 square is 196 and minus 4 times 5 times 49. So let's just do this. Minus 4 times 5 times 9, and this is coming out as minus 784. So this is a negative number, which means once my discriminant comes out as less than 0, I'm going to say that this quadratic equation will have no real solutions. It will not have any real x-intercepts, right? But again, you can do this question in Desmos. I really think that Desmos would be the easier approach for this one. So what are you going to do? If you know what are the solutions, you're just going to type this entire quadratic equation onto your Desmos and look for how many x-intercepts you might be getting. So for example, I'm going to start with x squared and then plus 14x minus 49 plus 14x minus 49. That's my first equation. And you can see that I'm actually getting how many intersection points, how many x-intercepts. Let's just move at the top. How many x-intercepts I'm getting. Okay, so I think I'm getting one x-intercept right over here, and I think there will be one more x-intercept somewhere behind. These are two x-intercepts, but still I'm getting at least one x-intercept, right? So this should not be my answer. The second one is x squared. Let's just replace this plus 14x with minus 14x, and then minus 49 with a plus 49, right? So I'm getting how many solutions? I'm getting one solution. I'm getting one x-intercept, right? So this cannot be my right choice again. So let's just put 5 over here, 5x squared minus 14x, and let's just put a minus over here. So minus 49. And then you can see again two x-intercepts, which means two real solutions. And finally, 5x squared minus 14x plus 49. So let's just put a plus over here. You can see that now your graph is not actually hitting your x-axis. You do not have any real solutions for this quadratic equation, which is why answer option D should be the right choice through both of the approaches. The function f is defined by the given equation, and the equation can be rewritten as f of x is equals to 1 plus p over 100 whole power x, where p is a constant. Now, which of the following is closest to the value of p? Now, since I have to write this f of x in the form of this equation, one thing that I can notice in the original equation is that if I write 1.84 raised to the power x over 4 like this, so I can keep 1 over 4 over here, and then I can just put a whole power of x right at the top. So this is just whole power of x right at the top, similar to this form, right? So I would have to do 1.84 raised to the power 1 over 4. So what is 1.84 raised to the power 1 over 4? So I'm just calculating this through my Desmos, 0.25. You can just type this on your scientific calculators as well. This comes out as 1.16467. So I can say this number is 1.16467 whole power x. But since I have to write this in the form of 1 plus something, and I can write this as 1 plus 0.16467 whole power x. And then since I have to get 100 in my denominator, I will just multiply 1 at the bottom by 100, which is why I would have to multiply 100 at the top as well. So this would become 1 plus 16.467 over 100 whole power x, and this gives you the most approximate or the most closest value for the unknown constant p as 16. So that should be my answer. But since this is an equivalent expression question, you can always do this question in Desmos. You can start with 1.84 raised to the power x over 4. So I'm going to type 1.84 again. I think Desmos would be a lot easier way of doing this question. So 1.84 raised to the power x1 divided by 4. Since I will try to regress this for the unknown constant p, which is why I would have to put x1 and then regression symbol, and then inside you're going to put 1 plus p divided by 100 and then whole power x. So this would be 1 plus not is equals to 1 plus p divided by 100 and then whole power x. So I'm going to put just a power of x right at the top, x1. Okay, so since I know that this entire left hand side is actually equivalent to entire right hand side for all values of x, I would have to provide this instruction to my Desmos that test this regression for a lot of values of x. You can just type x1 equals to random, and let's say you write a number inside bracket, let's say 12. So Desmos is going to test this entire system for 12 different values, random. Okay, rand, R-A-N, and then DOM. Okay, so Desmos is going to test this entire system for 12 different values of x, and after Desmos is done testing this entire system for 12 different values of x, Desmos quotes you the value of p as 16.46742, and that's mentioned in answer option A. In the given system of equations, p is a constant if the system has no solution. Now we are looking to find out the value of p. Now for all these type of questions, you always have to get your equation in this form: ax plus by is equals to c, right? So if I try to get my first equation in this particular form, if I subtract 7r from both sides, what I will be left with? I think I will be left with a 6 on one side, and then I will be left with, I think, pw minus 7r, and that's my first equation. Now if I add 5w on both sides of this equation, or if I subtract 5w on both sides of the equation, I will be left with 7r over here. And 7r minus 5w would be minus 10w. And if you're subtracting 5w from both sides, so 5w minus 5w would be nothing. And you will be left with just 11. So that's my second equation. Now you remember this formula, a over b is actually equivalent to c over d, which is not equivalent to E over F, which are basically your constants for all these type of questions. I can say if I compare the coefficients of variable W, this is P and this is minus 10. So I'm going to type P divided by minus 10 is equals to, now I'm going to compare both the coefficients of variable R from both the equations. This is minus 7 and this is positive 7 right at the bottom. So minus 7 and positive 7 right at the bottom. So if you keep on simplifying, I think this 7 times 1 and 7 times 1 stays, this cancels out, and then you will be left with minus 10 times minus 1. So I think the value of P would come out as positive 10, and that should be the right answer for this question, where we were supposed to find out the value of this unknown constant P. The graph of y is equals to 2x squared plus bx plus c is shown, and I can see the vertex of x right over here, that's minus 1, right? And I can see the y-intercept of this parabola as well. So obviously my c's value should be the y-intercept, right? C is always represented by y-intercept in the standard form of parabola. So C is equals to minus 6, right? And since I can see the vertex of x, I also know the value of a. So vertex of x is always equal to minus b divided by 2a. So minus b divided by 2a would be equivalent to minus 1, right? And you know the value of a at the bottom. So you're going to put a as 2 because a is provided to you as the coefficient of x squared as 2. So if you put 2 over here, 2 times 2, that would be 4, is equals to 1 over here, and then you will get the value of b as 4 times 1 as 4. So I know what is my b, I know what is my c, I just have to multiply these two numbers. So what is 4 times minus 6? That's minus 24. But I think again, if you get stuck with these type of questions, since you know a lot of coordinates in this parabola, you're going to just put all those coordinates onto your desmos. For example, let's say if I take one of those coordinates as minus 2 comma minus 6, since I know that this is one of the coordinates on this parabola, when x is minus 2, y is actually equivalent to minus 6. So I'm going to put minus 6. And let's say if I take any other coordinate, for example, this one, this is basically 0 comma minus 6. So let's just put 0 comma minus 6, 0 comma minus 6, one another coordinate. I think 0 comma minus 6 right over here. And let's just take any other random coordinate that you find on this curve. For example, what about this one? This is 1 comma 0. 1 comma 0. I will try to regress this entire equation. So y1, I know the value of a, so I'm going to put a as 2, and I'm not going to do the automatic regression. I don't want to put sliders for a, so 2x squared, and then plus bx1 plus c plus bx1 plus, you can just put c directly as well, but let's say if you don't know this fact that c has to be equal to minus 6, you can just put this as it is. And Desmos is going to regress every single thing for you. You're going to put x1 right over here. So Desmos tells you that b comes out as 4 and c comes out as minus 6. You're just going to multiply these two numbers. So what is b times c? So b times c is actually equal to minus 24. That's your final answer right at the bottom of the screen. The graph of the linear function y is equals to f of x plus 19 is shown, and c and d are positive constants. Which equation could actually define f, right? So if I try to define the function f of x, because I have to provide an equation for the function f of x, because every single answer option is expressed in the form of f of x. So if I subtract 19 from both sides, I can actually say that f of x is equal to what? F of x is actually equal to y minus 19, and the examiner has given me the graph for the function y. So I have the graph for the function y. I just have to figure out the graph for the function y minus 19, right? So I can say that f of x is actually created by translating 19 units downwards the graph of the function y, right? So y once gets translated 19 units downwards, f of x gets created. Now one thing is for sure regarding translations. For example, this function y has a negative slope because line is actually coming downwards while moving from left to right. Now if you translate your graph rightwards, leftwards, upwards or downwards, slope of the linear function never ever changes, right? So if this graph has a negative slope, the graph of the function f of x should also have a negative slope. So I'm going to eliminate any answer options that gives me a positive slope. For example, answer option C gives me the coefficient of term x as c, and the examiner has informed me that c and d, both of them are positive constants. So this is a positive number. So let's eliminate answer option C. And for the very same reason, I'm going to eliminate answer option D as well. I know that both answer option A and B give me the same numerical value of the slope, that's minus c, but still both of them are giving me a negative slope. Since c is a positive number, and if I'm multiplying a positive number by a negative sign behind, the entire value would come out as a negative number. So answer option A and B are representing the slope of the function f of x as a negative number, because the slope of the original function y was also a negative number, and translating anything downwards, upwards, rightwards or leftwards never ever changes your slope, right? So slope has to be a negative number. So I'm stuck with answer option A and B. Now if you look at this coordinate, what is your y-intercept currently? My y-intercept currently is 1 for the function y. But if I've decided to translate this entire function y 19 units downwards, this y-intercept is also going to translate itself 19 unit downwards, and it would actually become 1 minus 19. Your new y-intercept would be 1 minus 19. It will become minus 18, right? But at least I know that my new y-intercept would be a negative number. In answer option B, you see the constant. Once the equation is written in the form of y is equals to mx plus c, you see the constant d as a positive constant. It's mentioned right over here, d is a positive number. So you can see a y-intercept is a positive number in answer option B, which is why answer option B should be incorrect, because its y-intercept is incorrect. But if you see answer option A, this d is a positive constant, yes, but if you multiply it by a negative sign behind, it will become a negative number, right? So answer option A gives me the negative y-intercept, which is why I'm going to go with answer option A as the only best choice for this question. In the figure above, AB is equals to under root 34. So this is provided to you as under root 34. That's first thing. And then AC is given to me as 3 units. And CA is actually given to me as 21 units, right? So this entire base AE, this has to be 21 plus 3, 24, right? So if you see the smaller triangle and this entire larger triangle, both of them have one common angle, angle A. That's the first thing that I've noticed. This is smaller triangle ABC has an angle A, which is actually equivalent to this larger triangle's angle, angle A. So both of these two triangles have got one angle exactly equal to each other, right? And both of them have got one of the angles exactly equivalent to 90 degrees. So I've got two triangles where both of them have got two equal angles to each other, right? This means that both of them are actually similar triangles as per the property of double A or triple A, right? Angle, angle, right? So now when I'm saying that these two triangles are similar triangles, I can use the property L1 divided by L2 is equals to L3 divided by L4, or big versus small equals to big versus small. So for example, if I try to find out the height, since I have to find out the height of this bigger triangle, because I'm looking to find out the area of the bigger triangle, so I'm looking to find out the height of this smaller triangle. So since this is under root 34, that's my hypotenuse, and this is 3, so I can always do a square plus b square equals to c square for this small triangle ABC. So I'm going to put under root 34 as my hypotenuse as c square is equals to a square is one of the legs is square plus bc square. I'm trying to calculate the value of bc. So under root 34 square is just 34, and then you're going to subtract 9 from it. So 34 minus 9 equals to bc square. That's 25, and taking square root on both sides, you will get your value of bc as just 5. So I know this is 5, right? But now, when you have a look at your smaller triangle, the smaller triangle has a base of 3, right? Has a base of 3. But the bigger triangle has the same corresponding base of 24. So 3 once gets multiplied by the number 8 becomes 24. And since similar triangles always have same ratio of the corresponding lengths, if the base gets 8 times to give you the base of the bigger triangle, then the height should also get 8 times to give you the height of the bigger triangle. You can just write this down as 5 times 8 as 40. Or you can use the concept big versus small equals to big versus small, or L1 divided by L2 is equals to L3 or L4, whichever terminology more suits to you. For example, if I take the base of the smaller triangle, that's 3, and I'm going to divide it by the base of the larger triangle, that's 3 plus 21, 24. I know the height of my smaller triangle, that's 5. And let's say I do not know the height of my larger triangle, that's DE. Now, if you simplify this equation, do everything, just cross multiply everything, you will get the value of DE as 40. So I can say that DE is, or the height of the bigger triangle is actually 40. Since I just have to find out the area or in square units of triangle ADE, or the area of the bigger triangle, area of any triangle is always base times height divided by 2. So we're going to do 24. That's a base multiplied by 40 and dividing everything by 2. So I think that should come out as 20 times 24. I think that would be 480. So 480 should be the right answer to this question. The result of increasing the quantity x by 400% is 60. Now what is happening in this question? I have an unknown variable x, and I have to increase that value of x by 400% of itself, right? So I have to increase, that's why I've put a plus sign right over here, by 400% of x itself, right? So what is 400% of x? 400 per means upon, cent means 100, of means multiply, 400% of x. So I've just increased x by 400% of itself to reach to the number 60, because the examiner said that once x got increased by 400% of itself, it became 60. So I'm just equated my answer with 60. So this is x plus 4x, because zeros and zeros are going to cancel each other. So you'll be left with 4x plus 1x. That would give you 5x is equals to 60, and dividing both of the sides by 5, you'll get your value of x as 60 divided by 5 as 12, mentioned in answer option A. In the xy plane, a circle C with coordinates h, k, points A and B lie on the circle. So let's say I've got this circle right over here, and I do not know exactly what is the center coordinate of this circle. So let's say this is center C and this is h, k. And the question says that from your center, if you look, these are also in terms of the same h and k. So the question says that point A, where is point A? This is point C, by the way. Point A is somewhere on the circumference of the circle, but how I'm going to reach to point A from my center coordinate C? The question says add 1 into the center coordinates x value. So if you see that this is h, you add 1. For example, let's say this is my 1 right over here. This is my 1 value. So this would be h1, h plus 1. And then from there, you're going to move under root 102 units upwards, right? Under root 102 units upwards to reach to the circumference of the circle. So let's say I've already moved 1 unit, and then I'm going to move under root 102 units. Under root 102 units. Let's just draw the circle again to understand what is happening in this question. I'm just going to draw it again. So just to give you a good idea of how can we easily observe what should be a radius. So for example, let's say this is my circle right over here, and let's say I'm starting right over here. This is h, k, and I've just moved 1 unit right at the top. This is 1. So, and this is under root 102 units, under root 102 units upwards, right? So h plus 1, this is h plus 1, and if I'm moving under root 102 units, this would be k plus under root 102. So I'm going to say that this is 1, and this length is under root 102, under root 102. And then this will be my radius of the circle, and I can calculate this radius of the circle to Pythagoras theorem. By the way, you could have applied the distance formula as well to get to know what should be a radius of the circle. By the way, this is point A right at the top, right? So let's just find out through Pythagoras theorem what should be the radius of the circle, right? So this is 1, and this is under root 102. You're going to do 1 square, that's 1, and under root 102 square, that would be 102, is equals to your radius square or hypotenuse square, that would be r square. So r comes out as under root 103, right? Under root 103. So I know the radius of the circle. So this is point C, and this is point A, and I've got somewhere point B somewhere on the circumference, right? Point A and B lie on the circle. Let's say this is point B. This is point B, and this is triangle BCA. This is triangle BCA. This is my triangle that I'm dealing with. Let's just draw it with a different color, BCA. Now, what is happening in this question? The examiner tells you that, by the way, that you know the radius of the circle. That's under root 103. Now, this is under root 103. which is my radius, then CB is also my radius because you're moving from the circle, from the center of the circle to the circumference of the circle. That should also be a radius, under root 103 again. And the examiner also tells me that ACB is a right angle. So this is a right angle, but at the same time, this is also an isosceles triangle. Remember, in one of my lectures, when we were studying triangles and their angles, I did mention that whenever the examiner uses the word right isosceles triangle, the examiner is never going to tell you the angles of the triangle, right? Right, for right isosceles triangle, one of the angles has to be 90 degrees. The other two angles have to be equivalent to 45 degrees each. So this is 45 degree, and this should also be equivalent to 45 degrees. So here is the question where we can apply the ratios of the triangle. So if you see, 45 degrees opposite side is under root 103. So 90 degrees opposite side would be under root 103 multiplied by under root 2, because whenever we travel from 45 degrees to 90 degrees, we always multiply our side lengths by root 2. So this would be under root 103 multiplied by under root 2. And a very popular concept in SAT, this could come out as under root 206, because both of them have got same power. So I can multiply 103 by 2. So that should come out as under root 206 as the length of AB. But if you want to do this question in Desmos, you can do this question in Desmos as well. For example, if you have drawn the diagram and you know the center coordinate and you know one of the coordinates of the circumference of the circle, let's label every single coordinate. So what was my first coordinate? My first coordinate was C. Z equals to H comma K, right? And I'm just going to assume H and K as some random numbers. For example, you can just assume H and K as some random numbers because they're literally constants involved in the question. So H is equals to 1, let's just put K is equals to 3, any random number you're comfortable with, right? And then you have got one more point A. Point A is equals to, what is your point A? Let's just write this in caps. Point A is equals to, and then your point A's coordinate is, I think, H plus 1 K plus under root 102. So I'm going to start with H plus 1 and then K plus under root 102. So I'm going to extract root symbol right from here, under root 102. So that's under root 102. And then if you want to find out the distance of these two coordinates, which would be a radius, you're going to use the distance mod distance, and then you're going to type A comma B. Desmos is going to calculate you your distance C comma A, right? C comma A, because, or you can write A comma C as well. So A comma C, because I labeled my coordinates as A and C. So these are A and C. That's your distance AC, and that's specifically your radius. So once you know your radius is 10.14, so if this is 10.14, this should also be 10.14. And if these numbers are 10.14, if the side opposite of 45 degrees is 10.14, then obviously side opposite of 90 degrees would be times root 2 of this side. So what if I do times root 2 multiplied by, and then I'm going to multiply it by 10.14. 10.14, 14889. Or whatever, till whatever decimals you're comfortable with. You're getting this as 14.35, right? 14.352696. Now, I can just type these answer options onto my calculator and see which one of them matches to 14.35. For example, if I just move on to the next line and type under root 206, what is under root 206? To understand what is the decimal value of root 206, I'm getting this as 14.3526, approximately very much equivalent to the value that I was getting initially, which is why answer option A should be the right choice every time for this question. For an electric field passing through a flat surface perpendicular to it, so we have got a lot of things over here. Electric flux is always equivalent to, so I'm just writing flux is always equivalent to product of the electric field's strength. So let's just write electric field as EF electric field multiply by the area of the surface. That's the formula that I'm going to use in this question provided to me by examiner. Now the question says that we have got two squares where the side of one square is actually 3 times bigger than the side of another square. So let's say I've got one smaller square right over here, and if this ratio of the side lengths for squares is 3 times, then the ratio of the area should be 3 square 9 times, because squares are always similar, right? Squares are always similar, and the ratio of the areas of two similar figures is always equivalent to the ratio of the square of their lengths ratio, right? So if the ratio of the lengths is 3, then the ratio of the areas would be 3 square 9 times. For example, if let's just take the area of this square as A, therefore the area of this square would be 9A, right? Now, what is happening in this question? The question tells you an electric field with strength 29 volts per meter passes uniformly through this surface, which means that I'm going to keep this number constant throughout my calculation, which is perpendicular to the electric field, and the total electric flux of the electric field through this surface is 4640 meters, right? So 4640 is your flux. That's my flux, 4640. I've got a constant electric field of 29, but since this 4640 is my total electric flux, which means I'm going to put total area in the formula, in this entire formula, right? And the total area of the entire surface, which actually contains two squares, one of them has an area of A and the other one of them has an area of 9A. So obviously I'm going to put 10A right over here, 10A right over here. That is what I was that is what I was looking to do. Now I'm going to divide 4640 by 29. So let's see what is that number. So 4640 divided by 290A, sorry. So 4640 divided by 290. So let's see what that comes out. 290, and that comes out as 16. So I know the value of A. A is basically equal to 16. So if A is 16, this is 16, and this would be 16 times 9, 144. Now let's see what is something that I'm looking to figure out in this question. The examiner tells us that what is the electric flux? You have to find out the value of F in volts meters of the electric field through the largest square, but just the electric flux created by the largest square, right? So I am looking to find out an unknown value of electric flux. I know that the electric field is a constant number at 29, and since I just have to find out the electric flux created by the largest square, I'm just going to put the area of the largest square, not the area of the entire surface, which came out as, I think, 160. The area of the largest square came out as 144. So I'm going to do 29 times 144, and that would be my answer. Let me type this number, 29 times 144. So times 144, that comes out at 4176. That should be the right answer to this difficult question. The scatter plot shows a relationship between two variables x and y for data set E. A line of best fit is shown, and data set F is created by multiplying the y coordinate of each data set from data set E by 3.9. So every y value gets 3.9 times, right? Now, which of the following could be an equation of a line of best fit for the data set? Now, I don't know. I know some of these coordinates, some of the good coordinates on this linear function of data set E. For example, this one. I see this as my y-intercept. I am not sure what should be exactly my y value, but I think it should be somewhere around 12.5, or let's just take this as 12. So I know one of the coordinates on this linear function, that's 0, 12, right? 0, 12. And if this linear function has a coordinate 0, 12, this is data set E right over here. This is data set E. Then what should be data set F? Data set F is actually created by multiplying every single y value by 3.9. So what I can do, I can just multiply 12 by 3.9. So just the value of y, not the value of x. So I'm just multiplying 12 by 3.9 to create a coordinate for data set F. That comes out as 46.8. So I know the y-intercept for data set F should be 46.8. And see that number right over here. 46.8 as the constant, 46.8 as the constant. Answer option C and D give those constants as well. So answer option C and D cannot be the right choice, right? Okay, now let's have a look at any other coordinate. For example, if you're trying to do this question manually, I think I would love to take another coordinate. Which one of them is the finest one? So I can see another one. This is 12, 30 for data set E. 12, x is 12, y is 30. But since every y value is getting multiplied by 3.9, I'm going to multiply 30 by 3.9 and see what is the new value of y that I'm getting. 30 times 3.9. I'm getting this as 117, right? 117. If you try to find out the gradient of data set F, since you already know what is the y-intercept of data set F, that's mentioned right over here, 46.8. But if you try to find out the gradient of data set F, you're going to do y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, change in y divided by change in x. So I'm going to type 117 minus 46.8, 117 minus 46.8, that comes out as 70.2. And then x2 minus x1 would be 12 minus 0. That's 12 minus 0 at the bottom. and that's just basically 12. So 70.2 divided by 12, that comes out as 5.85. So I'm getting my slope equal to 5.85, right? 5.85, and that's very much close to the number 5.9. So I'm going to go with answer option A as a right approximated answer. But if you have reached to these coordinates, you can just put these coordinates on table, on Desmos table, and then Desmos will automatically regress this entire linear equation for you. So 0 and then 46.8 is the next coordinate, and then we're going to move to 12,117, 12,117, and that's my entire linear function, linear regression. Y is equals to 5.85x plus 46.8. That's my final answer for this question as answer option A.